continue, and we're holding in Amud HaTefilah, the pillar of prayer, we're holding Ois Chaf Hey 25. So we're going to read Chaf Hey Chavav quickly, 25 and 26. You should know, you should be aware that every single letter, every single word that you pronounce while you're speaking the words of Torah, the words of Tefillah, the words of when you're praying, is a complete structure, which means, like I spoke before, that every single word contains oilmos, worlds, souls, divinity, oilus Shabbos Elikus. So it's a full structure. And a person has to say it with complete strength. In the Gemara in Shabbos, it speaks about that a person says with all your strength. So Rashi and Tosis one says that it should be b'chol kavanasei, with all your intention, with all your strength, just say it loudly. So when you speak the words of davening, you should enter it fully, completely, totally. Because if not, since it's a koyma shlema, since it's an entire structure, and everything is mirrored on the structure of the tzuras adam, of the structure of the human adam kadmon, a primordial being. So therefore, if you're going to say something and it's not going to be complete, you're not going to fully enter it, so some of it is going to be incomplete, and it's going to be as if you said a word that has a missing limb, that the limbs are not complete. So everything that's projected outside of you, when you speak, you're creating reality, you're creating angels through the words that you're speaking. You're creating a type of energy frequency that you're creating. And if you're going to speak words that are incomplete, that means you're saying something, but your mind is wandering in another place. You're not saying things correctly. You're not entering it fully. Not even if you're not saying it correctly, but certainly if you're not entering it fully into the words, your whole koyach, your whole strength is not entering into fully. And the idea of b'chol koyach, with all your strength, is like the b'chol mo'itcha, with all your power of your being, which represents Mo'it Shalach, the infinite part of yourself, something like a higher quality within yourself, your totality, but something even more than the sum of the parts, something that's more. That also connects to the oir, to the light of the oisius within the letters that we spoke about previously, the light within the oisius. So when you say them, it should be complete. Chavav. This comes from Tzivas Arivash. Chavav also comes from Tzivas Arivash. And it's really what we spoke about before when we spoke about in 23, which is the idea that when you say the words themselves, when you're actually pronouncing the words, the intention, the kavana, the intention should be prior to reciting the words. But when you're saying the words themselves, it should be b'chol koychai, Baal, you should enter fully into the words. Because he says, if someone is having intention of all the intentions that he understands, so let's assuming that he says that the word Baruch means this, and let's say he even has the highest levels of intention of the Arizal, or even of the Rashash, and he has the deepest meditative, spiritual, Kabbalistic intentions of what the words means, but he understands them in a particular way, then he's only pronouncing the words while he's saying these intentions, and then he's only having intention for those specific things, what this word means. But however, but when a person says the words of davening, the words of prayer, with tremendous iskashas and tremendous cleaving and connectivity, which we spoke prior, which is with oilam as the shabbos alakus, with worlds, souls, and divinity, with a tremendous iskashas, so then nichel b'chol hatev is kol hakavanas ma'atzam malayim. Then certainly all the whole word, the everything that's loaded within this word is contained within it. All the possible meanings, all the various multiple possible meanings that this word could mean, and then bevadim esoyim oidus al yodim, and then certainly the flow will come down into this upper worlds, and then flow into the lower worlds, and he'll able to connect to the full power of what this word means. Okay, that's just an introduction to what we want to really talk about, which is the entry 27. Now, entry 27, Chav Zayin, is the Likutei Yikarim. Generally, Likutei Yikarim is a collection of teachings from the Maggid of Mezrich, or Doiv Ber, which is the primary student of the Baal Shem Tov. And this is a teaching that is specifically, this particular teaching is going to be connected to one area, but in the teachings of the Maggid, of Reb Dov Ber, the Maggid of Measures, in the teachings of the Maggid, we find a lot of similar teachings where he talks about a similar issue. So we're going to draw a little bit from some of the similarities. Let's just first read the words and just try to understand what this actually means. So it says like this: Gamit philosophy zacho brura. If a person's words that they're speaking, the words of tefillah, the words that they say in prayer, are going to be zacha obrur. They're going to be clear and refined. We'll have to understand why does the words that you speak have to be clear and refined in order for this to happen. But this is what happens. Bevadai, certainly, min ha'hevel hakadosh hayotzei mipiv, from the sacred exhale, breath, that exits his mouth. Yizdabek v'yischaber, would connect and cleave, im ha'hevel elyon, with the supernal breath of the divine, hadavek elav, which is also connected to him. So when he's speaking the words, and there's an exhale through the speech that he's speaking, this is an exhale. This exhale will connect to the divine supernal breath, which is connected to him constantly, and it actually enters into his body continuously. As Chazal say, as the Medrash says, on the end of the pasuk, the final pasuk in Tehillim, it says, Kol Hashem halakha. All living beings should praise Hashem. So the Medrash says, I call the neshima v'shima, on every breath that a person takes. Kol neshama means not only every soul, meaning everybody, but on every single soul, which means every single breath a person takes. V'yoytza hevel mena metata leila, then the breath, the exhale, leaves him and ascends from below to above, and then v'chayzeres elav me'ela latata, then returns to him from above to below. And therefore, it's very easy for a person to connect the divinity that exists within his soul, within his consciousness, within him, to its root. What does this mean? Okay, this is a very big conversation, but we'll just try to make sense of this as much as we can, Be'ez Hashem, to understand what he's saying. So he's talking, the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid are talking about this idea of that there's a schachas abriya, there's a renewal of creation, a continuously new creation. Creation means enters that creation is continuously being recreated, not only every 7 years or every 7 days, but every single day and every single hour and every single moment of every hour. There's a recreation of life. That's one idea. And this is chachas, this renewal of creation, that the divine light is recreating at every moment, occurs every single moment. And the process of the light, of the chayas, the vitality, the life force that comes into this world to animate the world, not only to animate it, actually to create the world, and then to animate and sustain reality. That's mahava machayim makayim, that creates and sustains, it gives it vitality, is that this chayas, this life force, enters into creation in a form of ratzav v'shoyev. Achayas ratzav v'shoyev. The life force enters in a way of coming and returning, coming and going. So if you look in Bereshis, so one of the things that the Baal Shem Tov is saying, one of the things that the Maggid is saying, there's something that's called the hevel elyon, the supernal breath. The idea of the supernal breath, hevel elyon, is already mentioned in the Zohar and the Kisari, where it talks about the 7 havalim, the 7 breaths that are the 7 havalim at the beginning of the book of Kahalas. These are the havalim, these are the 7 breaths that are connected to the 7 spheres of Klippa, possibly. But the way the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid phrase it is there's a hevel elyon, there's a supernal breath. Let's go back to the story of creation to understand this. In the story of creation, the metaphor or through which the creator, or the means through which the creator creates, the way the Torah describes creation, is Bereshis bara, that Hashem creates creation. Bara is a bria, a creation, something that's ex nihilo, something from nothing, as the Ramban writes. And the medium through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates is S, through the Aleph and Taf, through the letters of the alphabet, through the letter of the Aleph Beis. And in the more descriptive is when the Torah says, Vayomer Hashem Yi'or, Hashem said, let there be light, and Vayi'or, that the world came into being through the divine utterances. There's Asar Mamaris Nivra Olam, with 10 utterances, Hashem created the world, which means creation, the process of creation from ex nihilo, from something, from a nothingness, from an emptiness, the emergence of time, space, and consciousness, the way we define time, space, and consciousness, which has substance and form, emerges from a state of emptiness, of nothing, of divine nothingness. And this emergence of existence came through the medium of speech. This is the very simple way of seeing the way the Torah describes creation. And before there's a creation of one of the major archetypes of creation, there's a speaking. Hashem said, let there be light, let there be a firmament, let there be a rakia, etc. This is one form of creation, the medium through speech. Another form of creation, which is also found in Bereshis, the beginning of the Torah, when it speaks about the creation story, is the creation of souls. When it speaks about that Adam received a soul, so the pasuk says, the verse says, "Vayipach ba'apash nismas chaim." He blew into his nostrils a breath of life. That the medium through which the soul of the human the way a human became alive is through breath. So there's a medium of speech and there's a medium of breath. And souls are connected to breath, and created reality, physical reality, is created to speech. There's a pasuk that's in Tehillim that says that b'dvar Hashem shamayim nasu, with the word of Hashem the world was created. The world is a manifestation of a word. Physicality, materiality is a manifestation of a word. Uberuach piv kol tzavam, and with the wind within his mouth he created all the angels, the hosts. So we have now three images. We have the image of the creation that emerges through speech, the creation that emerges through wind, and the creation that emerges through breath. What is the definition of a creation that emerges through speech? Speech means that there's something internal, you have a certain thought, and then you externalize your thought through the means of speech. So speech is a process of taking something that's from the inside, an idea that exists within your mind, and sharing it with an outside. So the concept of an outside or an other arises in the idea of speech. When there's a person even monologuing, certainly when there's a person that is already dialoguing, the mere act of speaking inherently means that there is a listener. So it's an expression from moving from the inside outside, and so much so that there's an other that can receive that outside. So let's think about this in terms of the creation story. When the Torah speaks about creation, it speaks about the creation through speech. But that's the world that's created from a base. Bereshis, bara, like the Zohar writes, it's brought down also in Midrashim, that Bereshis starts with the letter Beis. The second letter also starts with the letter Beis, and the third and fourth starts with an Aleph. So Beis is the second letter of the Torah. Beis, the bara, the externalization, represents the creation of something that is external from the Creator, Kaviyachol. So let's think about this a little bit differently. There's an argument in the Gemara between Melez and Yeshua when the world was created, when the world would be redeemed. B'Tishrei nivra olam, was the world created in the month of Tishrei, or b'Nisan nivra olam, or was the world created in Nisan? And Tosfos brings down, there's a poem from Melez Kalir, and Tosfos says that really it's Eilu ve'Eilu, they're both correct, and it's talking about different types of creation. There's a creation in the thought, and there's creation through speech or action. Let's just think about this, the way it works in a human being. Let's say you have an idea to share with somebody. So first, the thought exists of the creation of the idea that you want to create first exists within your mind, and then you speak about it, and then once you speak about it, then you actually also create it and you physically do it. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by Hashem, the dibur is actually a ma'isa. The act of speaking is what creates it. So there's no that we don't need the last link. It's not thought, speech, action. It's thought and speech, which means that the world. Just to think about it like this: there's the Ein Sof, there's the infinite one, which is a singularity, which is the idea of Yachid Ba'olamai. There's a singularity, and this singularity has no possibility for otherness. The Creator had a desire to create something that appears to be something that's outside of itself. That thought to create, the nimlach, that original thought, the machshava, the thought to create kaviyachol, as if, that is the way creation exists within the Creator's mind. That would be the world that it exists as an idea, so it's already something outside of itself, but it's an idea existing within the self itself. It's existing within the Creator's mind. That would be the world the way it exists in its inception, the way the world exists within the world of unity. Within the world, which means world already means it's a definition of something that's separate, but it's Olam Atzilus, the world of Atzilus, which is the world of unity of one, that's closeness, which is Kaviyachol, the idea of the way the world exists within the mind of the Creator for the idea to create. Then, but it's not Bri Yesh Ma'ayin, there's no actual physical, material existence of substance, of form, of Chaymer and Tzura that comes into existence. It's just within the mind of the Creator. Similar to a person that's thinking about, I'm going to create something, the way the idea exists within your mind. But then came the process of an externalization. Externalization means that now it's not just going to be a thought to create within the mind of the Creator, but now it's going to become something outside Kaviyachol, as if, under the illusion at least, that it's something that's outside the Creator. This is a bri, this is a yesh ma'ayin. It exists as an emergence, as an yesh, as an existence, that seems to say that it comes actually from nothingness or emptiness. Of course, it comes from the ultimate yesh, but it appears to be, which means that's the creation of the world of Bria, the world of the created reality, the first initial creation reality, the world of substance, of Bria, the creation. That's the word. That's the way it's externalizing. Now, in the process of externalization, let's use the image of Dibitar Galash B'nai Adam, that the Torah speaks in the language of man, and we can move it in both directions. Let's say you want to speak something. So in order for you to say something, you first have the thought about what you want to say, hopefully, at least hopefully consciously, but even if it's not consciously, you'll definitely have that thought somehow in your subconscious. So first you have the thought, then you need to speak the words, which is the ejection of something that's within you, something that's bipnim, something that's internal to project it outwards. In order for the process of something to be projected outwards, you need language, you need words. But words, how are words formed? Words are formed as follows. There's a breath that exists within the lungs. This is oxygen, wind that exists within the breath. The breath rises upwards, and then it fills your mouth with a type of wind. And then you take the 5 potentials of the mouth, which is your teeth, your palate, your tongue, your throat, your lips, and you use the potentials of the mouth to create particular sound, which is language. So every single expression of language, of words, of tevis, the origin of that is the wind that exists within the mouth, and the origin of the wind that exists within the mouth is the breath itself. So if it didn't go through that process of the dividing itself through the 5 potentials, which is also called the 5 gevuros, the 5 restrictions, which means it's restricting the pure, undifferentiated sound of breath, and it's making these sounds of breath, which is one sound, which is a ha, like an out breath, a ha sound, heh, a breathing of a hey. It's taking that one sound and now differentiating them into particular sounds, and therefore you have language. But the origin of all the language, of the expressions of speech, is actually within wind, within breath. Now let's understand this, what the Torah is saying about how the creation came into being. The Torah is saying is like this, that there is kaviyachol, as a metaphor, as a way of understanding it, is that there's the creation, the way it exists within the mind of the creator. Then there's the beginning of the process of the creation. The way the world exists within the mind of the creator is as an akuda, as a point. Because it's a skira achas, it's one general conception of what the world should look like. That's like the yud, it's a point, it's a small dot within the mind. It's like a creative barak hamavrik, like a creative idea that you want to create something. You don't know exactly how you want to create it, but I have a desire to have a home, to live someplace, or to move somewhere. It's a very general idea, and it's like an akud, it's a point. Then, in the process of externalizing this thought, that it should actually become a manifest into time, space, and consciousness, something that's physical, it first enters into the world of breath, then it enters into the world of wind, and then it enters into the world of speech, and it becomes completely externalized. The Torah says there are three types of creations. There's the creation that's created through speech, which is the physical reality, which means that physical reality comes in its root, is rooted within the thought of the creator, but then it's expressed in such a way that it's so externalized. The means through which the expression from the internal to the external is through the medium of speech, and that then once it's expressed in the external, it can be so disassociated from the origin of the speaker that it's possible to look at the world and be a complete heretic, or at least agnostic. So there are two people, let's say two people look at a vista, at a beautiful sunset. One person says, Marabu Masach Hashem, Magadlu Masach Hashem, how wondrous is the work of Hashem, and is overawed and has like a spiritual experience of seeing the Creator's handiwork, and it opens them up, and they feel tremendous longing and desire and love, etc. And the other person looks at it and sees a very mechanical universe, and says, okay, that looks nice, but doesn't see any mystery, doesn't see anything deeper. Because since the world was created through speech, the connection between the speaker and the speech is and the recognition that the speech it originates from the speaker is really dependent on a person's relationship with the speaker. To give you an analogy of this, let's say someone comes over to you and tells you something that your wife or your husband told them, and they tell it over to you, and you are in a good relationship with your spouse, and you say, by the way, what you're saying is hopefully a very interesting idea. It sounds like something my spouse would say, right? Because if you have a relationship with your spouse, you will hear from the words that the person is saying that there's who the speaker, whose original idea was it, and where that original thought comes from. If that person conveys the exact same words to someone that doesn't know who your spouse is, or let's say better, you're in a conversation with someone that repeats something that your spouse said and repeats the words to you and to someone else that doesn't know who your spouse is, you're going to say, I'm listening to these words and I hear that it comes from my spouse. The other person is going to say, oh, that's a very interesting idea. Where does it come from? Did it come from you? And that's the exact same idea when we talk about two different people's relationship with the creation with creation. When a person looks at the creation and has an intimate relationship with the Creator, is in dialogue with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whether through prayer, through learning, through doing mitzvahs, through meditation, whatever the practice is that a person has an inner, deeper connection with the living presence of Hashem, when they see creation, which is the speech of the Creator, immediately that arouses in them a love and a connection and certainly an awareness of the Creator. Someone that has a less revealed connection to the living presence of the Creator looks at creation and doesn't see the Creator. So that's why the Torah describes the creation of physicality using the means of speech, which means that it gives the possibility and the ability for freedom of choice. You can look at the world and see a connection to its Creator, or you can look at the world and not see the connection. And that really depends whether you do have a connection and therefore you see within the creation the Creator, or you don't. That's what the medium is to speech. So that's what the Torah describes the creation. It says, Bereshis bar, there was an externalization, which means there was a creation of otherness, with the possibility of something receiving the otherness and not even becoming aware that its origin is from a creator. So the Torah describes this form of creation, that the creation was created through speech. The means of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creation was through speech. Hashem created through speech. Then there's another type of creation, which is angels. And that's also called Olam Asiyah, the world of Asiyah, or Olam HaShafel, the world of Chekira, the physical world. Then there's Mechtzef HaMalachim, the source of angels, or also called Olam HaYetzira, Olam HaGalgalim. What is that? That is the awareness of Beruach Piv. So there's another type of creation, which is the wind within the mouth. The wind within the mouth is sort of more a paradoxical reality, because on the one hand, the wind is something that's felt as a separate thing within the mouth. It's possible to feel the wind within your mouth. On the other hand, the wind is completely absorbed within your mouth. And that's the image of angels. That what are angels? Angels are conduits of energy, divine messengers. And essentially everything is a divine messenger, but the concept of an angel represents this quality, which is an angel is a created being, created either in the second day of creation or the fifth day of creation, which is different Midrashim, and there's different reasons why they're either connected to Chayas, they're connected to the animals, or they're connected to the idea of separation, which is day 2. So angels are created reality. On the other hand, according to most Rishonim, according to most early commentators, angels don't have bchira, they don't have free choice. There's Midrashim Chalukim about this, but generally we say that angels don't have free choice, which means angels exist as an independent being, but completely as a conduit to express the divine will within creation. So that's the Ruach Piv. And then there's a higher level that's even higher than angels. The higher level is certainly, according to Pisoid, the higher level neshamas of souls, which come even from rooted from the Olam HaBriya, the world of Bina, the Mechzav HaNeshamas, and the Olam Gan Eden, the world of paradise. The neshamas the souls come from, not from the wind within the mouth, but come even deeper, kaviyachol, within the Creator. So there's one that's coming from the externalization through speech, which almost exists as an independent outside existence. One exists within the mouth, and one exists within the kishkas, like in the gut, so to speak, within the belly of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, kaviyachol, which coming from the inner inside, and that's the source of souls. Souls is not only something that is a conduit and a medium through which the will of the Creator is fulfilled in this world, but the souls, neshamas, is a chelik elakah. Is literally a chelik elakah, a part of the divine. And chelik elakah is obviously a contradiction in terms, because you can't say a chelik of elakah. Elakah is oneness, divinity, which is one. Chelik means a division of that. But that's exactly what the pasuk is trying to express. That neshama is a chelik elakah. Mimal, the Rebbe adds mamash, that idea that neshama is a chelik elakah, chelka Hashem avu nafshi, that the neshama is a chelik elakah, means that the neshama is paradoxically an existence and a non-existence. Or like the Mittler Rebbe uses this language of the nitzis boyer and the nitzis niver become unified as one. The spark of the Creator, spark of creation. That is the neshama. It's even the deeper level than souls. Now, for the most part, the way we can understand them is that there are 3 separate realities: the world reality, the world of souls, the world of reality, the world of angels, and the world of souls. But the truth is, on a deeper level, and this is the only way it could be understood, is that there are three levels deep within every single created reality. There is the way the world exists within the world of Asiya and the physicality. That's the way the world exists through speech. But the root of speech is within the mouth, which means in the depth of creation, there's a reality, the way the world exists in the world as an angel. And then there's a higher, that's already with the form, the world of formation. And then there's a higher level, the way the world exists within the world of Bria, with the world that exists as a neshama, as a soul. And there's a higher level of the soul, where the world exists, and Atzilus, the way the world exists, which is the thought of the creation of souls. This is translated also into levels of consciousness. That there's a level of consciousness of the world, which we spoke about before, which is the idea of speech, which I recognize that the world exists, and I recognize within the world, within the creation, I recognize the creator, and there's a relationship. So creation indicates creator. Like speaking, like the words of your spouse reminds you of your spouse and connects it to your spouse. And you can see within the words, you can see your spouse. Then there's a higher level, which is the conscious awareness of being in the state of an angelic reality, which the idea is that a person becomes angelic. What does it mean to become angelic? That you live and your whole existence is that you're just a shliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're just a messenger of Hashem. I'm not created only for the purpose of to serve Hashem. I'm just a servant. That my whole she'ifas and my whole desires in this world is to be mimala shluchus shakadosh baruch Hu, to fulfill the will of Hashem. That's the level of consciousness, living at the level of angels. And the higher level of consciousness live that not only I'm just fulfilling the will of Hashem, is that I'm just one with Hashem. I'm in complete vekas, and of course therefore I do the will of Hashem. That's a level of neshama. How does this translate now into what the Baal Shem Tov is saying? Is like this. Since the world is created through speech, but the depth of the world created is created through wind, and the depth of the wind is created through breath. And since the creation is a creation of a renewed creation, at every single moment there's a renewal of creation. The chayes is Ratzav Hashoyev, is coming and returning, which means that every single moment, when it says the words that say Hashem said let there be light, there's not a utterance that was said, but it's continuously being said, which means, and the utterance is the speech, is a dibur, that has within it, what's really enlivening the speech is really the wind, and what really enlivens the wind is really the breath. And on a higher level, it's even the thought that creates the breath. But in the externalization that the creation exists, the chayes that comes into this world, the enlivening force that enters into this world from a supernal breath, as a divine exhale, kaviyachol, as if. In the world of Bria, there's the exhale of the breath. The breath then comes into the world of Yetzirah, comes into the world of formation, becomes as a wind. Then the breath becomes a wind, and then the wind becomes speech in the world of Asiya. This creates a physical vibration, and this creates the oxygen that allows for existence, that pulsates existence into existence at every moment. And everything is breathing. Everything in this world is taking and giving in. Is taking in breath and taking out breath. This is whether on a literal level, or even on a metaphysical level. Or the Pinson writes, like for example, of course we know that everything is like all animals and things are taking in oxygen. At least a lot of them are taking in and some form of giving and receiving, however whatever level that is. But he says that even, for example, like the oceans. He says when you look at the ocean is in roaring with waves, that represents the exhaling of the ocean, and when the water is more placid and calm, that represents the inhaling. So there's a cosmic inhaling and exhaling, which is the life force, the divine life force is coming down into this world, that's giving us chayes, giving us literally energy to enliven ourselves, to breathe and to exist. And if it's not necessarily in breath, and any type of form of life that's enlivening something to create, that metaphor, that is a mushal of that. The metaphor of that is that it's It's the supernal breath is being breathed out. There's an external divine exhale as it is. This creates the wind. This creates a speech, and this creates actually oxygen or whatever else the creation needs in order to sustain itself. Since we're created in the divine image, everything that we do is in the reverse, as it were. So every time a person takes an inhale, this is what the Baal Shem, that when a person speaks the words, we have to understand why he says Zachubur, we'll talk about it next week, that when a person speaks the words and projects their words, which means they're projecting breath, wind, speech through their own breath. Every breath that a person takes, you're projecting. This projection sort of now becomes inhaled, kaviyachol, from the divine supernal breath in the world of Bria. So our inhale, which gives us oxygen, gives us life, every time we take a breath in, we become alive. Every time we take a breath out, an exhale, we're dying. It's a process of dying. Now, obviously, it's not a complete process of dying, but it's a small process of death. There's an enlivening process, which is the inhale, and then the exhale is the death. What is the death? The death is ruach tashav alakim shanasana. The death is the return of the wind, of the spirit, of the life force to its origin. This is a teaching from the Maggid of Mezrich that speaks about it and says that the reason why there's machlokes in Gemara Rosh Hashanah, if a person is judged once a year or judged every day, he says the idea that a person is being judged every day is because every time you're taking an exhale, which you're constantly doing, every time a person takes an exhale, they're breathing out their chayes, their entire life force, but what's being breathed out, what's being expunged, what's being brought out is all your thoughts, all your feelings, and your mindset at this present moment is also being ejected now. And then it's ejected into the physical atmosphere. And then it becomes revealed into all the worlds, as it were, because then it's returning back into its source, that spirit, that energy, that quality, that life force. So it goes from the world of Asiya, physical world, to the world of form, to the angelic world, to the world of souls, and it returns back to its source. So there's a constantly recycling of breath. When you're taking in a new breath, which gives you new oxygen, new life force, you're actually inhaling the divine exhale that originates in Olam HaBriya, the world of Bria. It comes to the world of Yitzhak, it comes to the world of Sea, and then you're inhaling it. And when you're taking the exhale, you're returning it back. And there's a constantly moving cycling, a symbiotic cycling of this quality of breath, of receiving and giving and returning. This is why that the Ari and speaks about, others speak about this idea that it's also brought in Reishis Chachma. This idea of this halakim, and every hour there's parts. They're not minutes. And the way it's divided is tough for Reish Pei. It's divided to 1,080, and the 1,080 parts correspond because there's a new divine life force of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, the name of Hashem, that enters into this world continuously. The Yud Kei Vav Kei is 10, and there's 10 possible, is four letters, Yud Kei Vav Kei. The letter Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey. There's 10 possible vowels, the final vowels, which corresponds to the 10 spheres, the final vowels, without vowels, but there are 10 possible vowels, so that's 40. Then there's the 27 letters, the 22 letters plus the 5 final letters. So if you multiply the 40 times 27, you get to 1,080. That also corresponds to the average amount of breaths of inhales and exhales together, which a person takes throughout an hour. So there's the revealing of Hashem's name that's being projected into this world, and then there's the inverse reality of the person taking in the breath, and the person also breathing 1,080 breaths about for each hour. The calculation is that the average person breathes between 12 and 20 breaths in a minute. The way the Reishis Chachma and other tzaddikim write, it's about 18, which is high life, about 18 breaths for 18 breaths for a minute. So then you multiply 18 by 60, you also have 1,080. Abalafi says, Avram Malafi writes that you have 1,000 breaths, but that's be'erach, it's in that same zip code, as it were. So the idea is that you're breathing in. Now, the Yud Kei Vav Kei itself, the name of Hashem, which means the Chayes, which is the Yud Kei Vav Kei is the name. The name of Hashem, that's Mahava. The Yud Kei Vav Kei is the Havia, the source of the creation. The source of the beingness of the creation. So the Yud Kei Vav Kei, like the Shalach Kadosh writes, the Yud is the way it exists within Machshava. That's why Yud Nivra Olam Haba. Yud Nivra Olam Haba means in the Kud, in the place of the point. That's the way it exists in its perfect state. Olam Haba is the world to come in its perfect state. That's the way it's Beskira Achas, is one mind that Hashem has the world in existence. Then Behei Nivra Olam Haza, Hey is the out-breath. It's the exhale. So the Yud, which is still internal, becomes a Hey, which is an out-breath, which is the beginning of the breath, which is the Hevel Elyon, which is the primordial and supernal breath. The Hey then gives rise to a Vav. The Vav is the movement of the wind, similar to in a shofar, the wind that's flowing through the shofar. That's the wind that's the Vav, and then which is the world of Yitzir. And then finally, the final Hey is the 5 Motzayis HaPeh, the 5 potentials of the mouth, through which we said before takes wind and which takes breath and allows for speech and language to be created. So the Yud Kei Vav Kei also corresponds to that idea. And since the Yud Kei Vav Kei is the name of Hashem, and every single moment, this is what Ari writes, that every single moment there's a new tziruf of the name of Hashem. Every single moment there's a new tziruf. Every single breath there's a new tziruf. There's a new combination of divine quality that's being revealed in this world, of the Yud Kei Vav Kei in a different type of tzirufim, which is said before, the 27 times 40. The same also every moment when a person taking a breath, they're inhaling and exhaling. So the process is this movement of the divine exhale that's moving outward. Obviously, this is not a literal sense. The divine exhale that's moving outward from the creator, within the mind of the creator, to externalize. It enters as the world of breath. Then it comes out as a wind, the Yud to Hey to the Vav to the final Hey, the Motzayis HaPeh, which through language is Vayom Hashem Yihar, let Hashem sound, let there be light, or let there be oxygen. And then a person taking the inhale, which receives new chayes, new life force. Which means every time you, like we said, every time you take a breath, every time you breathe in, you become alive. You enliven yourself. You're receiving now, you're not just receiving just from the oxygen itself. What you're receiving on a very deep level is from the new chayas, the new life force that's being pumped into the universe. And therefore, it's yoitza hevel memenu metata leila. Therefore, the breath exits the body, goes from metata leila, from below to above. And sort of it's elevated from your exhale is now being inhaled, kaviyachal, from the divine inhale, moving from speech to wind to breath to the inhale, and then it's cleansed. That's the nidam b'chol shah. That's that the person is judged at every moment. It's cleansed, and then new life force comes into you, and you breathe in a new life. So the yoitza hevel mena matata leila, and then the chayzeres ela beila latata. It leaves you from below to above, and then it returns for you from above to below. Therefore, it's very easy for a person just to meditate on this and contemplate this idea just simply by the act of breathing. How the alakus shebekirba, the divinity within the person, which is the neshama of the person, is connected to its roots, to recognize this constant reciprocated and recycling of divine life force that's constantly coming into your body. This is something that I also wrote about in the book Breathing and Quieting the Mind. So if you want to see that sefer, you can read there, and it's a little bit more barichas, a little bit more explanation. The only thing that we have to get to, God willing we'll do this next week, is why does the Baal Shem Tov then say, why does the Maggid then say, if your prayers are going to be refined and pure? It would seem that this process is ambiguous. It's not relevant to what type of prayer you're saying, or in fact, if you're doing anything at all. And that's certainly not a kol nishima nishima to halakha, that every single breath you're taking, you're singing Hashem's praise. Just a person walking down the street is breathing. This is the process that's constantly happening. So why does it particularly occur specifically, or at least it's highlighted when a person has the words that he's saying in tefillah, the words he's saying during davening, during prayer, is when it's zachor b'rah. So Be'ez Hashem will continue with this next week. You should have a wonderful, beautiful week.